Welcome to 1850 Main Street, a place where friends get together and talk about their country and hope for a brighter future. Today, Rob Walgate and Alan C. Duncan from the Public Square are joined by David Zanotti, the CEO of the American Policy Roundtable.
Is it ethical for the media to selectively edit interviews with presidential candidates?
Growing up, I always remember the tick, 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 tick Sunday nights. I remember it as it followed football games, and it meant I should probably start cleaning up and getting ready for bed. Like the real week was about to start. I can remember that
it's an
back in
sound.
Fourth, fifth, sixth grade. Like, oh man, like the adults are taking
TV
over
for grown-ups.
Yes, yeah, no interest in it. But of course, I'm referencing 60 Minutes. Mike Wallace, Leslie Stahl. Let's see how many names I can remember. I may be out. I may be out. I may be out after those two.
Harry Reasoner.
I wouldn't have gotten that one. But
Barbara Walter. No, she was on ABC. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, it was ABC. But I bring that up because 60 Minutes has been in the headlines as of late because they're known for interviewing presidential candidates each election cycle. And this go round, they have interviewed one of the presidential candidates and one will not go on the program with them. And one of the reasons is because they released a bit of a video regarding the interview they did with Vice President Harris. And then when they released the full video, if I'm not mistaken, it didn't include the video that they'd released previously. It kind of got edited down and they were called into question about that. And they defended it in a roundabout way. They said they didn't edit it, even though they did a little editing to it. So I guess the question is, of what obligation are media companies or is 60 Minutes on CBS that so many Americans through the years have trusted? I'm not sure they trust to the extent they used to. Are they obligated to show the entire interview? Should they be editing video for candidates for public office?
Well, here's my question. How did we know that they edited it? Because I have seen them put the side-by-side videos. How did the more original video ever come out in the first place? Do we know?
I thought it was a leak by them, a little promo. Like they put it out.
That's so strange. So they put out the unedited piece and then they aired a highly edited piece. So they're like outing themselves basically on this?
The way I understand the story is that it got caught because people saw it out of sequential order.
Yeah.
In other words, answer A didn't match question A.
Okay.
And I don't think there's been any refutation. I mean, nobody said, no, that's not true. That was a hidden microphone or blah, blah, blah. I mean, they kind of got nailed and they pretty much have acknowledged it. So, where do you go with that?
Well, as somebody who does a lot of editing, myself, audio and video editing, you can.
So you're the guy. Okay.
Well, Jonah does a lot of our editing for us here on 1850.
So if it goes wrong, it's Jonah who did. So it's kind of, I see. Clear case of delegation.
It's a team effort. It's a team effort. But over the years, I've done a lot of audio and video editing, and you can really make things say something completely different if you want to. Now, sometimes it's a courtesy that if somebody misspeaks, like for example, on the Public Square, if someone says something oops, I didn't mean to say that, we'll trim it. It's a mistake.
Joy of being pre-recorded. Yeah, it is a much more complimentary. Yeah.
But we're never making someone say something different than what they intended to say. And I think that's a fine line.
Nor would we pull a question out from question A and put in the answer from question C. That's just not ethical.
It's for clarity. It's not for deception.
And here's the 60 Minutes statement on it. 60 Minutes gave an excerpt of our interview to Face the Nation that used a longer section of her answer than that on 60 Minutes. Same question, same answer, but a different portion of the response. When we edit any interview, whether a politician, an athlete, or a movie star, we strive to be clear, accurate, and on point. The portion of her answer on 60 Minutes was more succinct, which allows time for other subjects in a wide-ranging 21-minute-long segment. So 21 minutes, but I believe the interview was 45 minutes long. So that was the other questions people had, like, wait a minute, how are you picking what to cut when it comes to a candidate for president of the United States? You get it when you're interviewing MJ. I mean, there's going to be things he says that no one cares you leave on the floor.
Really? I don't know. But
Yeah. So the Last Dance would beg to differ, right? 12 hours and people were asking for more.
Yeah. Well, I think that does highlight an issue is why are you making the edit? Of course, you have to make editorial choices when you have ins and outs and hard breaks. But one of the things that people look for in a presidential candidate is, can you answer the question succinctly, honestly? Can you speak well? Do you have clarity of thought? That's what we're looking for. And so it kind of feels like you're covering for someone that we're not 100% sure can do that.
In a way, there's this no news here. And that's the sad part. Yeah. Because this is news. 60 Minutes has not necessarily been caught. Now, I know what it's like. You know what it's like to go through the editing mill. We did an interview last year with the Wall Street Journal. It was a very important interview, and we ran a time clock on it because it was a very important interview. And we did an interview with the Wall Street Journal for 52 minutes. And when the article came out, we had one line of the 52 minutes that appeared. We've seen the same thing happen. Alan, Rob, you know, in the many different policy discussions we've been in, some of the battles we've been in, some of the litigation we've been in, we have watched selective editing. It's real. It is the stories you pick and the stories you don't, as our friend Michael Del Giorno from your morning show is constantly saying. It's the pictures you pick, the pictures you don't. It's the quotes you select, the quotes you don't. So everybody knows going in that you're going to get hammered. And so that's why, and literally consulting agencies exist as part of their revenue stream is to teach people how to handle this kind of a dynamic. And I've sat in those schools and I know what they talk about. So it's a difficult game, but this is different. This is a news story. This is going to another level. This is 60 Minutes purporting to be a news agency, not a campaign consulting company, selectively mixing and matching words and sentences to make the candidate sound more clear and more concise in her answers, when in fact the news is that the candidate is not very clear or concise on her answers.
When people were watching 60 Minutes 40 years ago, do you think they knew who the interviewer was going to vote for at that time?
Why don't you ask Alan that question? Okay,
Yeah, no,
wait a minute. I get it. It's the OG question. I got it.
Because he was like me, getting ready for bed 40 years ago, letting the adults come in the room.
Yeah, that clock ticking was our get in bed clock. That's what that was.
For me, it was like,
I'm
man,
sorry,
how much homework
the
did I
question
neglect?
was 40 years ago. What was the question now about 60 Minutes?
When you saw them interviewing a presidential candidate or someone running for United States Senate, did you have an idea of who the interviewer was going to vote for?
Oh, that's a really good question.
I feel like today we know who's asking the questions, who they're going to vote for.
Well, and I think that CBS, parent company of 60 Minutes, is abundantly clear in that. We watched it in their debate as well. Their debate was simply horrific. It started off plastic and shallow, and it went downhill from there. And it's perfectly clear that they don't like one of the candidates, and they don't care if you know that. And it's perfectly clear that they're going to fact check the candidate they don't like and let the other candidate get a free pass or nearly a free pass. The bias in the last 40 years, it is beyond imagination, to the point in which I think Americans now know it's such a sore spot that you don't touch it anymore. We just accept the fact that we have to deal with the wound.
Thanks for stopping by at 1850 Main Street. We're glad you're here. Do you want to learn more about what's really going on behind the scenes in public policy? Tune in to the Public Square on over 200 radio stations coast to coast, or download the free Public Square mobile app from your app store. Just look for The Lamppost. Find out what America's talking about at thepublicsquare.com.
And this is why I think these alternative sources of media, these long form podcasts, have been so nice this time around, because you get to see the candidates. And Kamala Harris sat down on her own long form podcast interview. with a creator. And, Trump's been making the rounds. RFK Jr. has been making the rounds. This is something we've been talking about in 1850, is I think it's going to be that mainstream old guard legacy media versus these new alternative media sources this election. And we're going to see how it plays out. But here's the thing. Honestly, a podcast where someone sits and talks in a mic reminds me a lot of another old show that I actually do watch because they have a YouTube channel where you can watch them. William F. Buckley's Firing Line. No,
it's not Captain Kangaroo.
Firing Line with William F. Buckley. They would sit there and have long form conversations, and they have a YouTube page where you can find them, you can watch them, and
How good was that show? Have you watched some of those shows?
Oh, I watch it all the time. I try to go on there and watch, and you can read about you can listen to all these debates that they had back in the day, and to just let people talk for an hour.
Well, but we have to admit, William F. Buckley was a little creepy, though, wasn't he?
I like it. I don't know. I like him.
But as a kid, he would have creeped you out a little, right?
Probably. Yeah, I got into it as an adult. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
Robin Williams has a great impression of him, though. He does it in the movie Aladdin as the genie. So yeah, look for that. But
great. So, now
that's an excellent point. And to that point, Alan, who would have thought? I can tell you back in 2007 when we started to work on a longer format of the Public Square. We've been on the air as a short format program on radio since 1989. And then we began to move into a little longer format. And then we began to move into a daily format. And then we decided to move into a 1 hour weekly. And the biggest fight that I had on this, and I'm not suggesting yet we figured it out, but the biggest fight that we had was people saying it won't work because the attention span of people coming up is all dictated by Sesame Street. You won't find an attention span long enough for people to actually listen to an hour-long program. They just won't do it. But to see, that was under the assumption they had to sit in one stationary place to hear it.
Yes.
Now, because of on-demand through cellular devices and mobile devices, you can listen to as much as you want and take it wherever you want. And I'm telling you, we didn't know this. We did not know this is where it was going to go. But we are sitting in the sweet spot right now where people are listening a lot. And the difference between us and the people that rank top in the podcasting world is two things. One, most of the people who are top of podcasting are famous. And so it's a crossover easy market because people follow them based on fame or celebrity. And we don't resent that. We're glad we're not famous. We never tried to be. We'd rather be influential. But we would like to be heard. Now, the second thing, the big difference that we have is that there's a huge amount of advertising dollars that are available and going into these situations, which we don't have. And so we have to do everything the old-fashioned way. One person telling another person where to find help, where to find an answer, where to find something that works. So it's truly a word-of-mouth process. Now, we're not going to get bitter or angry about that because we believe that people who are looking for truth are going to find it because we're not alone in this battle. We recognize that there's a thing called the Spirit of Truth. It's talked about in the New Testament. And the people who are looking for truth will find the help that they need to get there. Now, we're trying, but in none of what we do are we involved in soliciting people to give us money. We do not make any income from these broadcasts exclusively. Now, they're a part of what we do for work, but it's not like if viewership goes up 300%, congratulations, everybody gets a bonus. Or if readership goes up 3,000 this week, suddenly YouTube comes dancing down our chimney, hoping to give us a big check. We're not playing that game. There is not a strategy to monetize our communications from the American Policy Roundtable or the Public Square or 1850 Main Street. Now, some people say that just makes you stupid. Maybe it does, but it also makes us different. Rob, I see that smile.
How do you monetize that? How do you monetize that? How do you monetize that? That's the question we get all the time. And we tell them what we do. We explain how we do it and why we do it. And they still leave scratching their head because I don't think anyone sitting around the table has that desire to be famous. And you know what? There's some people out there that are doing this that don't have the desire to be famous either, but they are famous because they do this well. So that can be a byproduct of what you do as long as you're out there telling the truth and doing the right thing.
Well, and while we're on the subject, let's go ahead and just throw it. I mean, we're talking about 60 Minutes. We talk a lot about the bigs. And there's no doubt we're challenging the bigs Now, we're not challenging them because we want to knock them out and take their place. No, we recognize that's not our role. But we're not afraid to talk about the intellectual integrity, the truthfulness, the accuracy, and the consequences and ramifications of what the bigs are doing. And we are exposing the bigs, and they don't like it. Now, the first thing they do when they don't like it is they ignore it, hoping that eventually you'll just get exhausted and go away. But we've been around for 45 years, and I'm not sure we're going anywhere. And the first thing that we've been exposing about the bigs that they're not going to tell on themselves, including these illustrious centers of virtue like NPR and National Public Broadcasting, they're just as much in the tank now as the Associated Press and 60 Minutes and everybody else. Some people are in the tank because they're corporations, use them as loss leaders, and they answer to the C-suite executives. But some organizations like the Associated Press are in the tank because they're taking big foundational grants to determine how they'll develop their news departments and their story reporting. And they can say all they want. The intellectual content or editorial content is exclusively that of the journalistic content of Associated Press. Blah, 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 blah. I mean, how stupid do you think all the rest of us are? If somebody's paying for the story and the story development and paying for the staffing, do you want to tick them off?
Just look how much money is being spent. You have to look at John Legend with 2 Band-Aids on his arm, talking about the flu shot, talking about the vaccine, talking about what the CDC's promoting. And you're like, how much money are they paying to be on there? Is anyone there going to be willing to do a piece critical? We saw that firsthand. DZ, we saw that firsthand in 2008 when you were asked to sit in on a talk radio show to be the host one afternoon because the host couldn't be there for 3 hours. They asked you to come in. I got a call that afternoon. I'll never forget. The producer called me and said, I hate giving people bad news. Do you like giving people bad news? I said, well, no, not particularly. And he said, well, you're going to have to call Dave and give him bad news. And I said, what? And he goes, well, I'm calling to give you bad news. Dave can't host the show. The reason he can't host the show is because we were running. Someone was trying to put casinos in the state of Ohio, or a casino at that point in Wilmington, Ohio, and we were opposed to it. And we had all the reasons why. It made no sense economically. It made no sense legally.
And we were beating their brains out in
they were
statewide
getting
campaign.
destroyed. They were getting destroyed. But they were spending a ton of money in media on advertising. And they called the bigwigs and said, if you let Zanotti host for 3 hours, we expect to be able to host next week for 3 hours, or you'll never see another advertising dollar again. And they were spending millions. So I had to make the call to Dave and say, hey, our 3 to 6 just opened this afternoon. Do you want to go play golf?
I don't fault the radio station as a commercial enterprise for protecting their bottom line. They have every right to do so. But let's not be mythical about the idea that this is free speech and that this is objective and that we're trying to make sure that all sides get represented. That's the way the game gets played. And I'm glad we went through that experience because that it's a shocking thing when it happens to you, but then you realize what we're up against. Now, most people who are looking for the truth already know everything that we're talking about right now. But I think sometimes it helps to hear it from some other sides of the conflict so you can realize, yeah, I'm not crazy. This is actually going on. And let's go back to 60 Minutes where we started. 60 Minutes is guilty as charged. It's obvious. I mean, court of public opinion, they've got no answer. They got caught, just like they got caught breaking the rules on the debate. So it's one more you check off the list knowing you're not going to get an honest or fair shake from CBS News or from 60 Minutes. That's sad. That's sad. Because what people don't recognize is that a free press, free to be wrong, free to be right, but free press, a press where somewhere in the process there's going to be somebody who's going to try to tell the truth, is a part of our constitutional equation. It's a part of our First Amendment. Because if we're going to be self-governed, our flow of information is critical. Because if all whatever happens to us is we're lied to, and then it comes our time to nominate candidates, to elect candidates, to support candidates, if all we're dealing with is lies, we're going to be propagating lies. The truth does matter. That's why the Declaration of Independence is established on self-evident truths. Truth matters. in a free republic. It really does. And the press is supposed to be one source. Not perfect, never has been. Benjamin Franklin had a newspaper and an opinion, and he mixed them both liberally. All right, that's okay. We're going to know that's going to happen. But you count on somebody to make sure that they at least try to give you both sides, not just one of them.
The conversations are just getting started. To get connected, check out 1850mainstreet.com. We don't data mine anyone or sell your information. Subscribe today so you don't miss a single conversation. We'll see you next time here at 1850 Main Street.